Dragon Ballers, if you're looking to buy Dragon Ball Super or One Piece sealed product, make sure to get 5% off using my link to Mystic TCG down in the description. You can also sell cards to them using their Facebook link, which is also down in the description. Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another meta breakdown video. In today's video, we have 4 different tournaments to cover. This is the last slew of tournaments before set 20 Power Absorb officially releases. And, you know, you'd think at this point in the game, we'd be used to more of the same, just like Crimson overly dominating. But at the World Championship, we saw all these strategies that actually give Crimson a good run for its money. And I think this weekend as well, we saw a good amount of that. We have, again, 4 different tournaments to cover, lots of data. And this might give us some insight as to what the ban list will look like going into set 20, because we're still at a point where we haven't gotten the ban list yet, unless by some miracle it's out as I release this video. That would be really funny. But yeah, at this point, at the point of recording, day before this video actually goes live, we don't have the ban list yet. And it might be a lot different than we think, because Crimson does actually seem to have a lot of hard counters, but it still seems to be the most, if not one of the most popular decks. So will that remain the same going into set 20 if it doesn't get hit? These are all questions we have to consider. But anyways, we'll just jump right on into the data. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell to never miss a video, and let's jump right on in. We are starting with the Carta Magica Online Regional. The link to the deck list will be down in the description, courtesy of Eggman. But here we have the top 16. We have 256 players. So this was a fully sold out online regional. The prizing was super solid. First place does get a medal card. Shout out to my teammate Danny, who won the event with Bulma. Bulma takes down the last regional of this set 19 Zenkai Dash Pack format. And yeah, you hate to see it. Bulma, I still think it's one of the most unfair decks in the game, but I mean, hey, no one plays it for whatever reason. Thank goodness. So let's just keep it that way. But yeah, Bulma does give Crimson a good run for its money because of a lot of things we've seen from Worlds. It's a leader that does not attack. It's a leader that stalls Crimson out very, very effectively. It, one, doesn't attack Crimson, so they can't activate battle on Bulma's turn, but it also just does a great job of negating Crimson on their own turn, so they can't get their leader cycle. But that is like kind of a bad thing in and of itself, and what I mean by that is, if you really need to counter Crimson in these specific sorts of ways, now you're looking at really toxic, like unfun strategies just to counter Crimson. So for that reason alone, Crimson should probably go, but I digress. We do, of course, have 3 Crimson. I made a top 16 of this tournament myself, as well as a few other great players. We have 3 Trunks Vegeta. I'm sure that this deck picked up a lot of hype coming off of the World Championship. And I definitely do wonder, maybe we'll take a look at the deck list later at the end of this video. I do wonder if any of these lists were ballsy enough to play the 7-drop Emperor of U7 Frieza, because if you're going into a tournament this big and you know, thinking you're not going to play against red, I would say you're probably going to be sorely mistaken. And that type of build, while it is very good against Crimson, very good against blue decks, it's very greedy in the sense of like an open meta where you may face an aggro deck that's going to take advantage of your super long game oriented deck. We do have 3 Gamma, so again, like as far as like the American tournaments have gone leading up to Worlds, we're very used to seeing Gamma alongside Crimson. However, we don't see any Beerus ramp in this top 16, which is definitely a first. Like, I'm pretty sure all the consecutive Zenkai Cups leading up to Worlds at the start of the set 19 Zenkai Dash Pack format, I'm pretty sure that we've seen Beerus top all those, at least in America. Europe has been very different. We'll talk about Europe in just a little bit. But yeah, seeing no Beerus here, definitely very surprising. Although I will say 2 of the 3 Crimson lists in this top 16 were ramp Crimson. They were playing their Hirudegarn 8-drop ramping card. So with that in mind, I mean, I guess you could just, you know, get rid of the Beerus leader, play Crimson, ramp, do all that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's some inspiration there from Andrew Duvall as well, the build he played at Worlds. And then we have actually some red. So we haven't seen red doing well in America since pre-set 19 Zenkai Dash Pack format, I guess. Basically regular set 19 and set 18 format. But we do have red Sin Shenron, SS4 Gogeta, a Pan reboot, a red Android 13 of all things, which that deck profile will be up on the channel tomorrow, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Really, really spicy build. And we do have a red-blue Cooler Mill, which is not necessarily an aggro deck. It's not even necessarily just a red deck. It is a red-blue mixture, and it is more of a mill deck, so mill does have some representation here. But going back to red, we do have some aggro, which is cool. Like, we basically have, you know, a fair amount of mid-range between like Crimson and Gamma. We've got your control with Bulma and Trunks, and we've got your aggro with the Sin, the Gogeta, and the Pan. And that's a triangle you expect to see, where control usually beats mid-range, aggro beats control, and mid-range typically beats aggro. It's not always like that exact rule of thumb, but that's generally a pretty decent rule to follow that I abide by. But it is cool to see the balanced triangle here with all the different play styles represented. And we do have one blue Bojack as well. I'm pretty sure this is my friend Josh. Shout out to him, because taking blue Bojack this far is really cool. I think that you know, against the red decks it does very well, because it is a combo centric oriented blue deck that just naturally defends well, again, by playing battle cards during combo and whatnot. But with the addition of Ramp Zangia, you actually now have a leg up in blue matchups, because you do get to your blue bombs faster, and a lot of times blue mirrors are just a battle of blue bombs, so getting there a little bit faster is definitely really good. But anyways, let's move on to the second tournament we're talking about, which is the European Regionals. We do have this graphic here from the Lookout. Shout out to you, man. As always, we have first place Red Sin Shenron. Now, this is what we've been used to seeing as we've looked through the American and European Zenkai Cups leading up to Worlds. Europe, for whatever reason, has been a lot less crimson and a lot more red. This is not the first time we've seen Gogeta and Sin do so well in European events. It's just so interesting that Europe is approaching the meta so differently than the US. And I think what's really happening is a lot of players in Europe want to play the counters to Crimson, at least from what I've seen in previous tournaments, like the Golden Friezas, the Trunks Vegetas, and all that good stuff. But red can do very well into those decks because they're much slower, much more control oriented, and they need time to set up, and red doesn't give you that time to set up. So that's what I'm just kind of thinking. We have less players in Europe actually playing Crimson, more players in Europe actually playing the counters to Crimson, and as a result, the red decks are probably doing very well. And of course, red probably has like high representation as well, but I think that meta trend is what's leading to all this red success. We do have a good amount of Gamma, which makes a lot of sense considering that it made second place at the World Championship. We do have Spring Kai of Time, which I think was kind of put on the map a bit more so at the World's LCQ when my friend Sawyer making top 8 there. His build is very unique. I'm not sure if these builds were following the exact same scheme, but if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, go check out his deck profile, which is here on the channel from last week or the week before. He's playing a very unique set of cards that help the leader fix a lot of the problems that it has. We do have the one Crimson, and we do have the one Golden Frieza, a very good anti-Crimson pick. But overall, this European Regional top 16, very, very aggro heavy, which again, super interesting to see how they're approaching it, different than the US. But next up, though, we have an Italian Zenkai Cup. So for the Italian tournaments, there's two of them we're going to go over in a second here, which is kind of interesting to see there was two Italian tournaments in the same weekend. I guess maybe one was in person, maybe one was online. I would assume that's maybe how the split worked. But yeah, about 60 players, I think it was for the regional. Not sure exactly how many for the Zenkai Cup, but we do have a first place set to Rainbow Vegeto. And this is pretty much just an even top 8, except for 2 Gammas making top here, which Gamma is doing very well and seeming very popular on the weekend. I'm sure a lot of people, again, took inspiration from the second place World Championship build. But Vegeto taking first place here, definitely a bit surprising. I think that you can fare well against Crimson because on your Unawakened side, at the very least, you're not a leader that has to attack. So you can slow Crimson's Awakening down just a little bit. And you do play very high power boss cards that are not necessarily the easiest thing for Crimson to combo out of turn after turn after turn. And you do have Vegeta Resolve renewed for Beerus Area Annihilator, which is the biggest answer to all your boss cards. So maybe Vegeta does have a couple good things going for it in terms of the Crimson matchup. That's something I would definitely like to explore a bit more. I was playing Vegeta a lot in Set 18 format, or I guess whenever the Anniversary Box came out. Haven't been playing it as much because I've been playing Crimson and Golden. But yeah, with those things I mentioned, maybe Vegeta does do pretty well into Crimson. Then, of course, we have our red suspects, Gogeta and Sin. We have the Spring Kai of Time, we have the Golden, and we have the Beerus ramp. The first event we've seen Beerus actually top for this specific weekend. And now we'll move on to the Italian Regional. We have top 16. We have a first place Red Sin Shenron. So like I said, red just overperforming in Europe, man. It's super interesting to see. But we have a lot of aggro in this wheel, actually. So we have the SS4 Gogeta, we have the Crimson, no need to really talk about that. Gamma once again. We have Yellow Baby skipping over set 2 Vegeto, which is definitely a super like rogue out there aggro pick, but they got some cool stuff. The deck revolves around offering. The deck's able to take itself down to 1, which is theoretically really good for an aggro deck, assuming you actually win the game that turn, because that means you get every single resource possible from your life before you're going for game, which is kind of cool. Again, it's very fringe though. I think it's like a few good cards or maybe like a new leader away from being actually pretty solid. Now Golden Frieza is here once again. At this point, I'm pretty ready to call Golden Frieza like tier 1.5 or maybe tier 2, because it is a good counter to Crimson. Its leader does not have to attack, so that slows Crimson down considerably. and it's just been super consistent. Like, it's topped every single European event we've looked at over the past like month and a half probably. So I think this deck is very, very good. Obviously I chose to play it at the World's LCQ for a reason. We have the Trunks Vegeta, we have green Gotenks and green Cooler, both representing green here, which is super funny because I don't think out of any tournament this weekend or even going back a couple weeks, I don't think we've seen any green top at all. It's been, unfortunately, as usual, the one color left out of all the top cuts. So maybe going into set 20 there'll be some changes there. I mean, of course, I think that depends on how the ban list approaches things, if we even get a ban list at this point. I do have some decently high hopes for SS4 Goku coming out of set 20. That deck's been doing pretty well for me in testing. I did actually just post a Patreon article about it yesterday if you want to check it out. Super 17, unfortunately, after testing it, not very good. Probably just more like a casual local fun deck or anything. But before we wrap this video up, I do actually want to take a look at the Trunks Vegeta lists to see how similar or not similar they were to the World Championship list. All right, so here we start with Josh's 5th place list. Shout out to you, Josh. Here we go, taking a quick scan through, pretty much just looking for Emperor of U7, which I don't happen to see here. I do actually the Slug Engine, which is definitely a pretty solid pick, especially if you do expect to see a decent amount of red in this tournament. And it's also not bad against Crimson either. Slug is like not great against Crimson in the early game, but if you're at a point in the game where Crimson's maybe a bit lower on resources and you find a good mid-game time to stick Slug, then it's actually pretty solid because now you're turning off all their pseudo combos, all their draw during combo. It's really, really good in that scenario. Going on to the 14th place build, we're taking a look through. We are not seeing Emperor V7 Frieza. We do see 5-drop Frieza Divine Transformation in the main deck though, which is going to be good against your blue decks, but it's definitely a bit risky to try and play against the red decks because one, red decks get around this card's permanent of not being able to remove from the battle area because minusing it just gets around that because it can't exist on the board as a 0 power battle card. But besides that, I mean, in this deck, tapping out 5 for it while it is a blocker, you better have a lot of other defenses set up if you're going to try and do that. I mean, you might have made it turn 5 against red. That's the one thing, but yeah, definitely a blue call here for sure. And here we have the 15th place list, which actually uses the new Zenkai Dash Pack cards, which do not seem to be too popular in Trunks Vegeta, but they are definitely an option. I guess I should probably checking out the side decks here because I forgot this is a sideboard best of 1 tournament. Nothing in the sideboard here. We have nothing in the sideboard here. And let's check out Josh's list one more time. Does he play Emperor of U7? Does not look like he does, which is definitely interesting to note. But anyways, guys, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. Again, deck list down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.